Give glory to God, our light and our life.
You're listening to the recordings of sessions from the Institute on Liturgy, Preaching, and Church Music in July of 2024, hosted by Concordia University, Nebraska. If you'd like to learn more about past LCMS Worship Institutes or about those that might be coming soon, visit lcms.org/Worship Institute.
We're going to start by looking at this series that is coming out, that continues to come out through CPH, a compilation series called Proclaim. If you haven't heard of this yet, it's a really neat set of preludes and harmonizations for the hymn of the day. We all like to highlight that hymn of the day because it is the most important hymn on a Sunday. It's the sermon hymn. It's the hymn that encapsulates the whole theme, much like the collect for the day, and sings it before we preach on it. So CPH continues to publish this series. Two of them are highlighted today. One for the 3-year series, Series B, Volume 1, and then also a continuation of the 1-year series set as well. Because remember, we do have 2 sets of lectionaries here in the LCMS. The 3-year and the 1-year. So I'm going to highlight just one piece from here in the Series B, Time of the Church, Volume 1. But just remember, there's a whole bunch more of these to be had, and that will continue to be had over the coming years. This is a very nice setting of, hang on just a second. I can't turn my page. O God, O Lord of heaven and earth. It will be the closing hymn for the Eucharist on Friday. And it continues on in that style for a little bit. As I mentioned, that this series not only has preludes into the hymn, but it also has things to do within the hymn as well. So, for example, in this case, not only do we have the introduction to the hymn, but we have an interlude and a final stanza, which I'll play for you now. There's a nice little key change involved. Skip ahead to the coda. So a really lovely setting, easy to intermediate in ability, lots of variety in there, different styles, different composers. It's definitely a series in its totality that's worth your consideration. And while we are talking in this vein, oh, hang on. Here we are. I want to take us to something just a little bit different, okay? Something that's very similar, but a step up in terms of difficulty and also very creative, is John Behnke's set of complete hymns, or hymns complete. This is the third set in this series that he's come out with. Again, similar idea. There's an introduction for each of these hymns that's in here, and then settings in the plural of stanzas, right? So the point of this is not only do you have an introduction that you can pull out that's something a little more creative, but then you also have various harmonizations of the stanzas that are written out. They're very nice. Here is a setting of Jesus, Lead Thou On, the tune Seelenbräutigam. Here are some of the alternate harmonizations that are not in the hymnal. Trumpet solo in a verse. The final stanza. So he really gives you in each of these hymns in this series a lot of choices, a lot of things to select from. The one caution I would have is that his arrangements of the hymns, at least the ones I've taken a peek at, are definitely far different in many cases from what's printed in the hymnal. So if your congregation is used to the harmonies, used to the cues that are usually in the hymnal versions, these are going to be pretty creative beyond that, right? So just do a little picking and choosing to see, do you want to use all of the available verses, or just select some of them, so there's still a little more familiarity, okay? John Behnke, great composer, very creative settings, definitely worth your time to look into. And then let's get a little more local. Paul Sulik. Wonderful composer. Again, in the vein of things for hymns, to make your hymn playing more creative. This is how to make your hymn playing creative in 30 seconds or less, right? It's the festival intonations, or you can call that preludes into the hymn, introductions into the hymn, that are very short, very quick to learn, and they are excellent. It's certainly something to take a look at. Here is a sample of Guide Me, O Thou Great Redeemer, a wonderful Welsh tune in the style of Paul. This is very festive and very jubilant. Jump into the verse. Right. Yeah, great hymn, great arrangement. Here's another one. Again, festive, exciting, short and sweet. Come thou fount of every blessing. Toccata. Right, so these are nice little arrangements. Doesn't take that much work to put together. And on a side note, there are a number of these that I've selected that, because they're so short and sweet, they're pieces in a microcosm, right? You can also, as a creative organist, use those as basis for improvisation if you wanted. So it wouldn't be that hard to take something like that little starter toccata, and then expound that for a little more of the hymn tune. Be great for a student who is learning how to improvise or to compose. These are little forms in miniature, right? So another nifty use of these, okay? Again, there are 2 of these right now that CPH is featuring, but I think there are more that are in the series, both by Paul Sulek, hymn introductions. By the way, what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to start passing things around. Let's see. Please share these amongst yourselves as you're looking at them. And then just kind of pass. In fact, why don't we pass this way, send them around, and then pass them to the other side, okay? There we go. And then we'll just make a pile up in the front when we're done. Okay, one more, and this is approaching the hymn singing, again, from a completely different aspect. This is Paul Grimm inviting them to sing 60 hymn introductions and how to prepare your own. What I like about this series is that, again, he gives us these little miniature introductions, 60 of them, in fact, but it's really more of a textbook, right? At the beginning, there's a whole explanation of some of the basic ideas of how you can take just what's on the page of the hymn and make your own creative hymn introductions, right? And it's also a good starter if you're trying to learn a little bit of improvisation. This is a good way to begin experimenting with that a little bit. One of the things that he talks about is varying the texture of the hymn, right? So, for example, starting with one of the voices, the soprano voice, then adding an alto voice, adding a tenor voice, adding the bass voice at the end. And then he takes those ideas and he puts them into play in his arrangements. So here his arrangement of Farleigh Castle, the tune of Farleigh Castle, which you'll all recognize. Starting with one voice, adding the second. And a third. And last. It gives you some very nice ideas for how to introduce the hymns. If that's a project that you're working on over the summer, this would be a great book to get a hold of. New out of CPH. And then let's see here. We talked about the Proclaim series already. Let me pass that around as well. 2 more books coming your way. All right, so let's go ahead and move then to a little more music that's based on hymns, but also a little more focused than on what you would play for voluntaries, preludes and postludes, offertories. Although I would like to stress that for many of these arrangements, they can also be really effective extended introductions, right? So if you want to use them within the hymns, wonderful, right? Let's start with, we're going to start with simple manuals only selection. This is a series that's subtly titled 4 Manuals Only. This particular edition is by Matt Mockimer. Matt is one of the cantors at Fort Wayne Seminary. But if you look on the back, you'll notice that there are other sets that have been done. This is the 6th set in the series by Kenneth Koch, Ben Cooley, Jeffrey Blairsch, who many of us just heard in recital a second ago, Kevin Hildebrand, and Charles Callahan. So this is the newest in the series, but if you're looking for some nice things to do just with the hands, these are great resources. My one comment with these is that your hands need to be fairly skilled to pull some of these off. They are a little bit busy. Some of these have the feel like they should have a pedal part, as in some of us, when we're looking at a piece of organ music that's for 2 staves and we know this part goes in the pedal because it's the lowest voice. You could adapt these in that way to have a pedal part, right? It feels like that's the way it could have gone. But it works very well just with hands. Let's start with an arrangement of Hear, O My Lord, I See Thee Face to Face. Actually, that's Farley Castle. It's the same tune, so a different take on it. Get the idea and the flavor of that lovely lilting arrangement. Here is something completely and utterly different. A toccata, no feet. I should have mentioned this is the same tune, so you hear it on the top voice. Let's see, it starts here. All right, so you hear that tune kind of creeping along the upper voice. Here's a little more of it. Yeah, I'll start with that. And you get the flavor, right? Really delightful. Again, you could add a pedal line to that, but it works really, really nicely with just manuals. So, set 6 in this series, if you are a pianist who's playing on Sundays and are not quite comfortable with the pedals yet, this is a really good series to have. Lots of variety, lots of different composers, and many, many of the hymns in our hymnal covered. Okay, 4 manuals only. There is that. Here is a set of preludes by Brett A. Heim on some of the more ignored Luther hymns, the Luther chorales, right? So it takes 5 hymns of Martin Luther. These are really, really delightful and beautiful. We're going to start with, I'm actually going to play a little bit of both settings of To God the Holy Spirit, Let Us Pray. What I like about this is it sets both settings in a relatively historical sense, right? So the first one is a cantilena, a historical form for a song, right? And so you'll hear the tune singing, but it's decorated, it's ornamented, right? And then you'll hear a toccata, which is the verse that is, he quotes with sacred fire aglow. So you'll hear that fire whistling away. Here is the first setting. it goes from there. One neat thing that he does here, in kind of a German chorale prelude style, is he foreshadows the entering of each phrase of the chorale. So it's predicting the melody before it happens, and just subtly, our ears are exposed to the notes that we'll be singing, right? So you can hear in the opening line. So you hear those opening notes, da dee da 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 dee da, right? So all of a sudden, when it comes in, then it's a familiar tune already before we even heard it, right? So a very nice arrangement. Here's another, the toccata. Another good option for expanding if you want to do a little improvisation. As we always say, the best compliment is imitation. So, yes. I want to add, this sounds a lot harder than it is, right? These are just basic 5-finger patterns, right? And what he's doing, which is why it's a great tool to practice your improvisation, is he's planing these chords up and down, right? Same formation of the hand for the most part, right? It's just broken into arpeggios, right? So take a listen. Nice, nice piece. That is the Brett Heim arrangements. Let's jump to Northwestern Publishing House for a second. And I want to take a look at something that Ben Cooley put together. Benjamin Cooley is a wonderful composer. He's one of my favorites that is composing today. He does really well when he composes for organ. He knows the instrument extremely well. His settings are very creative, and I love this setting because what it does is it takes many of the traditional tunes, especially if you're in the Wells Church, traditional tunes for the ordinary. That is the Sanctus, the Gloria, the Kyrie, the Agnus Dei, and he puts those into organ arrangements, right? So he actually starts. For many of these, he starts simple, as if you're singing the tune, but then he breaks into a improvisation based on there. Let me do 2 of these really quickly. The first is the Kyrie, Lord have mercy, which is the tune that we know from Divine Service 3. Lord have mercy. Again, starting in the style of the hymn, and then breaking from there. You get an idea of how that flows. Here is another one, which I think is just lovely. This is a freer arrangement of the Agnus Dei, the Lamb of God, pure and holy. Again, the one that we would have in Divine Service 3. That's a little bit of an abbreviated version, but it's a lovely, lovely piece. Again, this is the Extraordinary Ordinary. And it's worth, as I pass this around, take a look at just a little bit that he writes in the front about why he's setting settings of the ordinary. Sometimes we get a lot of hymn settings of everything that changes, the propers, the hymns, but we don't get a lot of settings of the things that happen week to week. And because we call it the ordinary, is it ordinary or is it extraordinary, right? So this is worth taking a moment and reading. I'm going to pass a couple of things around here. We'll pick it up. Thank you, Janette. I appreciate it. All right, jumping to something a little bit different. For those of you who don't know Michael Costello or Karl Zeebel, Kenneth Koch, this is a really nice series also through Northwestern Publishing House. And it's hymns that are on the themes of repentance, raised, and refreshed. Some of them, many of them we have in our hymnal. I'm going to play you just a little bit of a selection from Wide Open Stand the Gates, Jerusalem, du hochgebaut Stadt, by Michael Costello. One of the things that I like about Michael Costello's arrangements, oftentimes they follow a very clear and exciting ritornello form. They're usually jovial and bouncy. He composes a lot in the style that Bach or those composers would have written around that time. Very exciting stuff. Here's a little listen. You get the idea. Lovely setting, trio all the way, a number of different styles and varieties in here. Definitely all worth your consideration. By the way, how much time do we have for this session? Those of you who have your schedule on you. We have an hour, so we go till 3:15. Good. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't 3 o'clock. Okay, good. So again, here's this to pass around. Janet, thank you. I appreciate it. Okay. How many of you all have played music by Robert Hobby before? Or as I love to call him, Bob Hobby. Bobby Hobby. Bob Hobby. Wonderful composer. Plays up at, I think he's mainly retired now from Trinity English in Fort Wayne, but an incredible arranger. So many wonderful settings of hymns. And a long time ago, he began a set of hymn preludes called 3 Hymns of Praise. And he called it that because each of the sets were 3 hymns. Usually he wrote the set in its entirety for one person or for one church, right? And so he would compile these into a set, which means that each set has a little bit of its own character. It's written for a different organ or it's written for a different person. Some of them are harder. Some of them are clearly written for a more romantic type instrument. I think in a lot of them you can hear the wonderful Skinner that they have at Trinity English pounding through. In fact, the one that I'm going to play, the Trinity English Cathedral famously, or not cathedral, but their church has a very loud, very strong state festival trumpet. It fills the whole room, and you're going to hear that in a second in this arrangement. But these sets were divided. I mean, you sold it by the set. I think it was $10, $15 for a set of 3 hymns, right? And there must have been, somebody tell me, 6, no, there were more than 6, I think 10, 11, 12, maybe even upwards of 15 sets that were published through Morningstar, right? Well, now Morningstar has wisely decided to get a little more life out of those sets, right? And they put it all together in one big book, right? Now, the advantage is that if you're like me and you only own some of the sets, this book is only $40, or at least it appears to be. I bet there's even a discount on it if you buy it here or something like that, right? Very reasonable price, especially when you consider you're getting all of those sets compiled into one book, right? And I tell you, these hymn settings, I have never stopped using them since high school when I first started playing them. They are so creative. They are very catchy. You can play them in recital. You can play them in church. You can use them as hymn introductions or for hymn festivals. They are really, really lovely. And again, of all different shapes and sizes, shining on different styles of instruments, this is definitely worth your consideration. Even if you have some of those sets already, why not? Spend $40 and complete your series, okay? This is one of my favorites from the set. It's Holy God, We Praise Your Name, the tune Großer Gott. And you'll hear, as I mentioned, the big state trumpet from Trinity English. And you can kind of hear that's just asking to be an introduction, right? You need verse 1 after that, right? So I think many of these, or most of these, work really, really well in the context of the hymn playing, but they make wonderful pieces for voluntaries and everything too, right? So definitely worth your consideration, even if you already own some of those pieces. They're wonderful, wonderful arrangements. Okay, let's take a look at something by Tom Mueller. Tom is in attendance, not here, but he's at the Institute, and for those of you who don't know him, he is the organ professor of church music at Concordia Irvine out in California, and a wonderful player, a great composer. And in this set, he brings in a nice, fresh musical language. So this is 7 verses or 7 versettes on Wie schön leuchtet, how brightly shines the morning star, right? And he gives a verse for each of the verses in the hymnal, right? This is great if you're looking to do something creative on a Sunday or for a hymn festival between stanzas of singing or just by itself. It is worth noting that he does specify which verse goes with which text, right? So for example, this first setting is meant to go with verse 1, how brightly shines the morning star. Notice the technique I'm using here, which he does call for, right? You've got your right hand holding some notes, your left hand holds some notes. The left hand is actually going to have to thumb down to the lower manual to play the cantus firmus, the melody. You'll see me playing that exclusively with my thumb. That's specified in the score. Again, left hand's going to share here. Contrast that with the next verse written for Dein süßes Evangelium, with the verse that begins with that German text, translated, your sweet gospel. One of my favorite things about this arrangement is how he combines two different parts of the melody in the same section, right? So you have it explicitly in your left hand in the soloed out, the cantus firmus, but in your right hand, the bicinium part is hinting at something completely different in the chorale, right? Here's a good example of that, where we get into the second section. So you're going to hear your right hand. So you get the B part of the chorale, as opposed to the repeat of the A section in your left hand. Da, 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 right? Here it is together. So it ends up being this lovely weaving together of different ideas happening simultaneously. A wonderful set of versets, definitely worth your consideration. Great for the end of the church year, which is coming up faster than we know it. And speaking of which, if you all have been on the social media just a little bit and you're friends with other church musicians, maybe you've seen the memes coming around about church musicians sitting on the beach listening to Christmas music. I think church musicians in this room understand what that's all about, and pastors, because in July is when we plan for Christmas. So there's one more thing I want you all to look at. I'm not going to play it. Another set of Ben Cooley arrangements. Tidings of Joy, 5 organ preludes for Christmas, because it's never too early to begin practicing your Christmas music, right? Certainly not for planning it. So I'm going to pass that around. Some really creative settings in there by Ben Cooley. And here is the Bob Hobby arrangement. There we go. Yeah. Okay. Also worth your consideration, just something to look at from Morning Star. 4 chorale preludes for Sunday mornings by Matthew Lachman. I think I'm not going to play those right now, but the nice thing about, well, actually, no, I'm going to give you a little bit of a sample. These are all set in historical styles. So this one is a little bit of an homage to Buxtehude. I'm going to give you a tiny little sample of some sections of it. This is a prelude on Ebenezer. Da dee da 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 da. Right. The thing is, you have to wait 2 pages to get the tune explicitly. Right. So he's hinting at it throughout this piece. But if you're waiting for an explicit cantus firmus, you have to wait a little bit. Here's the opening, just to give you an idea of the Buxtehude flavor of it. Starts to hint at it here. It's a fantasia. So you hear just the little opening of the melody. Right? Without that. But then it comes later on in a jig fugue, and this is where you'll hear it most. on and on. It's certainly not for the faint of heart, ladies and gentlemen. It's definitely involved, but a nice set, a nice arrangement, especially if you've got a little bit of prelude time to kill on a Sunday morning. These are really, really nice things, okay? And then this is a collection that is compiled and edited by Michael Burghardt. It's the classic Concordia chorale preludes. I want to stress that most of these, if not all of these, are not by Michael Burghardt. These are Michael Burghardt going through the old and out-of-print CPH catalog, right, and finding these treasures to reprint. And in his own words, right, these mini chorale prelude gems, which are meant to be pulled from representative historical figures from the Lutheran composers of the 20th century, right, are meant to continue to edify us today in terms of technique, in terms of understanding how hymns and chorale preludes work. And so you'll see things in here from the likes of Richard Hillert or Thomas Gieshen, Austin Lovelace, Don Busaro, Theodore Beck, Jan Bender, Karl Schock, right? Wonderful names in here. Here is a setting of Herzlich tut mit Verlangen, right? O Sacred Head Now Wounded. This is by Austin Lovelace, and it's unlike any setting you've ever heard of this. But I think it actually really fits the disjointed nature of what's happening in the crucifixion quite well. So what he does is it's simply set in the melody, but he sets it in different octaves, pointillistically, right? And then he holds on to the notes. So by the end, you have a cluster chord of the whole phrase, right? Sounds like this. Yeah, it's neat. Last phrase ends like this. And that's all there is to it. Certainly a testament of the time. And, you know, again, I was ready to sing the next verse. Right? I think that leads really well into the series. It captures the crucifixion quite vividly. Thank you, Janette. All right, good. So let us jump then to, we were just talking about Richard Hillert. This is the product of the good folks at Concordia Chicago and the Richard Hillert Library. Going through the library of some of his organ tunes that were written for particular occasions, put in a file, and never published again, right? Or never published at all, right? These are the collection of real gems of the time. Now, I want to emphasize the time that Richard Hillert was composing for was the neo-Baroque, slightly chromatic, or in some cases very chromatic, time of the mid-20th century, right? Or into the later 20th century, right? So a lot of this you're going to recognize if you're familiar with the Hillert settings of the liturgy. You'll recognize a lot of the three-part writing as opposed to adding a fourth voice in there, the sparser writing that was more accustomed to the neo-Baroque instrument, the organ, right? But you will also hear a lot of chromaticism. So here is a setting of Lord Thee I Love with All My Heart. Just a little flavor of it. Again, lovely in its own right, certainly different to our ears. And it goes on in that vein. Here's one more thing, just for your listening pleasure. This is a setting of For All the Saints, in case you want to get ambitious for this fall. Or if it's a postlude and you're trying to clear the pews, this is a good way to do it. Goes on just in that same vein. Some lovely textures and variety. Again, chromatic and crunchy to our ears. A lot of what he's doing there is bitonality. So he's playing in one hand, in one key, and the other hand, taking chords from a completely different key and overlapping them. And it's neat, right? So Richard Hillert is definitely a collection that you should look into if you like his music. Wonderful. Okay, I'm looking at the clock. I want to draw your attention to two other collections very quickly. Make that three collections very quickly. First of all, the CPH arrangement or editing by Sam Etherton of the music of Telemann. Music that is absolutely wonderful for surface playing, delightful to play. Telemann always loses in the shadow of Bach, right? He did in his time, and he has since, right? But don't ignore his music. It's so functional for church music, for preludes. All of these are settings of hymns that we have in our hymnal, right? So wonderful for the church organist, okay? And then let me draw your attention to a couple settings of psalms, because after all, this is the theme of the conference, right? Charles Callahan has put out a number of psalm impressions for the organ. Now, to be clear, nobody is reading the text, right? These are impressions that capture the text musically, right? They're psalm poems for the organ, right? And the nice thing about this particular setting is that it's written for organ and, as he often likes to write for flute or another C instrument, right? A solo instrument. Lots of flexibility involved, but absolutely beautiful settings. I'm not going to play them right now. I wish I had more time, but these are there for your looking. Again, there's a number, and I'll pass the whole stack around. I think there are 3 or 4 settings of psalm preludes by Richard Hahn, as well as free settings poems by Douglas Wagner, Robert Lau, and Gwyneth Walker. All of these are worth your time and attention. Thank you, Janet. Here, I've got a couple more for you while you're at it. Okay, and then just walking through the other song settings really quickly. There are settings of hymns that are based on psalms. Michael Burkhart has a series here through Morning Star, 5 psalm hymn improvisations, right? So it's taking some of the common hymn paraphrases for the psalms and nice settings, as well as, this is through Augsburg, I believe, Pastoral Psalms by Franklin Ashdown. So taking some of those common tunes associated, such as "The King of Love, My Shepherd Is," and making nice arrangements. Okay, I want to conclude. Nope, I think we're gonna skip that as well. I just want to point it out. This is a fantastic free tome poem. Actually, it's of Psalm 40, verses 1 through 3. Craig Phillips is an incredible composer. Really understands the organ well, colors it so nicely, and this is a very free, luscious setting. You can hear the text just crying out. I waited patiently upon the Lord. He stooped to me and heard my cry. Which is a nice way to conclude and to bring us back to the theme of the conference, Songs of Deliverance, right? Thank you all so much for your time. I hope this has given you some ideas. And feel free, I believe, you all can tell me because I haven't seen them yet, but I believe that all 3 of those publishers have representatives that are here and tables. Where are they? Okay. Right, so do take a moment and visit them. And there are plenty more options than these, but a lot of these will be there. One more quick note for you, that is in your handout. We touched on some of these, but there are a lot more selections for you to go through that are listed that we didn't talk about today. All right? Thank you all very much. We will see you all around. Thank you. Of course.
Thank you for listening in to this recorded session from the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod's Institute on Liturgy, Preaching, and Church Music. We hope you'll join us at one of our conferences in the future. Visit lcms.org/worshipinstitute for more information. lcms.org/worshipinstitute.